I'm sure if you guys have been following this channel for any period of time, you've heard us say the term house money. This team's in a house money year. We're ready for a house money season. We are actually going to define what a house money team is and the number one house money dynasty strategy that we can give you guys today. What are the rules of it? How do we structure each position? And then we'll give you guys some examples of house money teams that we have built across our dynasty portfolio. So if at any point in this video you feel like you got some value, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out our contending strategy video. Check out our rebuilding productive struggle strategy video. But before we get into it, Danny, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. And yeah, you guys would have seen like the explicit startup strategies, obviously between the rebuilder versus the contender. Well, house money isn't exactly a startup strategy. It's not something you go in and say, you know what, I'm going to draft this fully on house money. It's more so an evolution of your rebuilding team, like we'll get into. It is a stage of where your dynasty roster is at. But we're going to get into all of that and more in today's video. But with that being said, let's hit the intro.
So the first thing we got to do is define what a house money team is, because you guys have maybe never heard this term. Maybe you've never watched a video of ours. So we're going to tell you basically what it is, because we say it in Dynasty Decisions videos all the time. A house money team is essentially, like Danny said before the intro, an evolution of a rebuild. Your rebuild has developed into close to a contender. You're not quite a full status top 3 team in your league yet, but maybe you're a few small moves away from being a contender. Most dynasty players make the mistake of going all in, right? Shoving their chips into the middle. Maybe they have 2024 first. They're going to trade them all away for productive pieces. And that kind of sacrifices all the value that you've worked so hard to build up when you were rebuilding. What we're saying with the concept of house money is that instead of going all in, you're basically indifferent year one or year one of your house money team, whether you win or not, because you know that inherently, because you've built a young roster that's going to be good for a number of years and you have a very bright future, you probably still have a lot of draft capital as well to add to your team following the house money year. In most cases, you don't actually need to force it, because you know that that team is going to develop on its own. And in most cases with house money teams as well, you might also have players on your roster that aren't necessarily going to be great this year, but they're good for the long term. A guy like Kyler Murray comes to example because he is coming off of a major injury. Any rookie quarterbacks, because they're usually not very good in year one. A guy like Drake London, for example, whose quarterback situation isn't the greatest right now. Any players returning from injury like Javonte Williams or somebody like that. And then also like rookie players in general, rookie wide receivers, rookie tight ends, not usually their best years of their careers are going to come right off the gate, right on their rookie contracts.
Yeah, I think the best way to put a house money team is that if you were to stack it up on underdog projections going into the year, hypothetically, if you were to leave an underdog draft with it, you probably wouldn't be favoring the team. However, the intrinsic value of the players you have, like you kind of mentioned, guys like Drake London, Kyler Murray, the value that these guys hold on the market is so high to the point where if you decide to make the transition, if your team is showing you a lot of signs that it could potentially produce a high leverage type of year, say you start off 4-2, 5-2, you're top 3 in points in your league, at that point, you can shed some of that intrinsic value on the market into some point production once you're ready to make that turn. But like kind of Corey said there, you're not rushing it. You're not shoving your chips into the middle. You're more so playing it by ear, kind of seeing what had happened. Therefore, you're in a house money type of state.
Yeah, so essentially, like I said, you have a young team with a few holes that you could patch right away if you wanted to, but instead you deploy a wait and see type of approach. You're only going to patch those holes with potentially 2024 capital or whatever other assets you have if your team is breaking right. Let's say you have a young wide receiver core, 5 or 6 wide receivers. They're all under the age of 24. If they all hit, if they're all performing like wide receiver 2s or better, then by all means, kind of push your chips into the middle, make some moves at that point in time. But you don't want to do that beforehand, because you know inherently, because your team is young, there are going to be some growing pains that probably won't produce like a top team quite yet. But you know, again, there's no rush. You're going to be a great team in your dynasty league if you build this thing the right way for 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And we're going to kind of get into briefly how you want to structure each position and how you know that you're in a house money. And then we'll also kind of relay back to this when we talk about our own house money contenders as well. So quarterbacks, because we're talking about a team that's nearing completion of a rebuild, this core should probably already be built. You should probably already have these guys established. Maybe you have 2 studs like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, or maybe you have 1 stud like Patrick Mahomes and you have 2 young guys like Bryce Young and Will Levis behind him or something like that. We'll break down some structures that we like when we get to our own teams, but that's essentially the nuts and bolts of how you want to structure quarterbacks in super flex formats. In one quarterback leagues, you pretty much just need 1 young quarterback that's going to carry you. Like Trevor Lawrence is all you pretty much need.
Yeah, 100%. You want to at least have a building, staple of the franchise type of quarterback added with at least some upside to the position where hypothetically, if you had like a Trey Lance, like we'll get into with one of my examples, if you have like Trey Lance and he ends up materializing into a top quarterback, that gives your team a lot of point scoring upside that maybe you didn't spot coming into the year. Some of those examples with players that maybe hold lower median projections, but have high ceilings, if they are able to progress into a young franchise quarterback in this instance, it'll further you along in terms of your potential contending window. However, when we look at the running back position, it's kind of the opposite. In quarterbacks, you kind of just want to get your quarterbacks. You want to make sure those are like fully established by the time you're ready to compete. With running backs, it's more of a wait and see approach when we're talking about a house money. Usually your house money window will come a year after your rebuild year. And the difference between a rebuild and a house money is that come season time, if your team's showing the potential or the upside of potentially reaching that potential, you're liberal to make moves to potentially transition into a contender. What do I mean by that? Maybe you have an unproven type of running back core. Maybe you have guys like, Alexander Madison, Damian Harris, a lot of like these zero RB guys are going to get hyped on underdog. Say one ends up materializing into a James Conner, and your running back position that you expected going into the year is actually stronger than when you anticipated. So instead of starting 3-4, like I mentioned, maybe you're 5-2 and you're ready to make a move and you have picks on the dock to be able to spend. So ultimately, your running back position is what's going to tell you in terms of what it's producing for you from a point production standpoint, whether it's time to go from your house money to potentially transition into the contender, or whether you should wait, like Corey said, to spend those 2024 picks.
Yeah, because as we talked about in the rebuild video, you build out your quarterback core, your wide receiver core, your tight end core. Running backs are the last thing that you drop in. So if you spent, let's say, on all these like zero RB guys, like Danny said, maybe you spent a bunch of rookie second and third round picks as well the previous year of your rebuild on guys like Zach Charbonnet, Kendre Miller, Chase Brown, Tank Bigsby, Tajay Spears, whatever. And you have 3 or 4 of those guys on your roster in addition to some zero RB guys, and 2 of them become like RB1s or like high end RB2s or something like that. Then at that point in time, maybe you can take one of your 3 2024 firsts and go out and trade for Josh Jacobs or go out and trade for Tony Pollard to get yourself some more stable running back production. Because at that point in time, obviously your house money team has materialized into a contender, but you did deploy that wait and see approach that Danny kind of mentioned. And the wide receiver and tight end position are a lot like the quarterback position, as we kind of talked about already.
100%. Your core should be built around young upside wide receivers and tight ends. And like running backs, you want to monitor their performance and their development. If they're performing and developing quickly, like we kind of mentioned, a guy like Drake London, he's currently a top 10 overall wide receiver in Dynasty valuation. But people already know going into the year, given the potential Atlanta Falcons low passing volume, that he may not be a top 15 wide receiver weight off the bat. But hypothetically, if he does take the step up, if he does look like, what Garrett Wilson showed at the end of the year, or what like Jefferson, Chase, Lamb, all these young superstar level wide receivers, if he takes that type of step and he's giving you top 12, top 15 level production, then at that point, maybe you consider, hey, you know what? My team, guy like Drake London, maybe Kyler Murray's ready to play at the beginning of the season. These guys are actually materializing into players that can help me produce right now. Maybe I picked that wide receiver I took in the startup draft because of his young upside. Maybe a guy like Treylon Burks, and you try to buy some point production at that point. Maybe Burks plus a 2 gets you Tyreek Hill. Maybe Burks plus a 2 gets you Cooper Kupp. At that point, you've built a team that has a lot of liquidity, but doesn't exactly have that full-on point projection. When it does show you that point projection, when it does show you that production in season, you have some type of moves that you can potentially do to make that transition from a value hoarding type of team to a team that can kind of do both.
Yeah, and like the overall buying philosophy of your house money team is in year 1, you would have sacrificed your return on investment because you built out a productive struggle because you're trying to build out as much value as possible. You're trying to focus on asset accumulation rather than raw points accumulated in the startup. Whereas your year 2, in terms of like the life cycle of your team, year 1 is the rebuild. Year 2, if you've done things right, is going to be your house money year. And then by year 3, you've spent those picks, your players have developed, your players have materialized, and you're able to actually contend at that point. That's kind of like the ideal structure that you come out of after the startup. In the startup, that's year 0. You built out, you grab your foundational quarterbacks, your foundational wide receivers, you punt away year 1. Your team's terrible. You drafted Bijan this year. You got Gibbs. You got a bunch of players from this year's class. And then year 3, like we said, if once those players start to develop, maybe you make some moves in season to acquire more capital and get yourself some 2024 picks. That's when you kind of are ready to actually make that competitive window, which is why we think house money is one of the best strategies to employ, because most dynasty players are inherently very impatient. And once they see the fruits of their labor and they see their rebuild start to materialize a little bit, then they want to shove their chips into the middle, trade away all their young players for proven production. And you could have gotten there just if you waited half a season or if you waited a full season. And not only would you have gotten there, you would have gotten much better than you would have initially gotten to, because, you know, your Drake London that you just sold low because you wanted a productive receiver has developed in his own right into a young, productive franchise caliber receiver that's worth more than 2 first-round picks on the market.
100%. And the biggest point of a house money type of team is evaluating opportunity costs around your league and capitalizing when you spot market inefficiency. So, for example, if you were in a startup a couple years ago, your rebuilding year, maybe you took Deshaun Watson when he was dealing with his legal troubles. You got him in the 5th round of the startup. Well, the following year, going to the Browns, you kind of already knew, hey, listen, he's going to be suspended. He might only play 6 years. If you drafted Deshaun Watson 2 years ago in your startup in the 5th, 6th round, he's now a top 15 overall startup pick. He's a player that could potentially be a top 8, top 7 overall quarterback. Spotting those type of inefficiencies in players that, if you just wait a year on, are going to completely obliterate their market value. Those are the calculated risks you need to be taking. A prime example last year, a guy like Calvin Ridley. Going into this year, maybe people are off of Kyler Murray. There's so many examples year over year where you can clearly envision them easily materializing into a big value gain. Only people are scared to take them because they're so focused on the raw year 1 point production.
Yeah, so that's enough mumbo jumbo. We can get into our teams, and we'll kind of outline some of the principles that we've talked about throughout this, how we structure each of our running back and quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff, because me and you both have 2 examples of teams this year that will be house money contenders. And a house money contender, again, if you skipped ahead to this point in the video, is a team that could contend if things break right. Maybe you make a few moves here and there midseason, but most likely you're going to deploy a wait and see approach, reevaluate midseason. If you can compete, make a couple moves. If you can't, you know you have a bright future. You have a young team. So the first team is my Bush League Dynasty Best Ball team. This was a league that we started with some of our patrons last offseason. It is a best ball format. You can see prototype quarterback core for a house money team. Kyler Murray, not going to probably be on the field week 1 this year. He's the perfect house money quarterback. He's the best one, and I think, in all of Dynasty, because we know this time next year he's going to be more valuable than he is now. Anthony Richardson is a rookie quarterback. Inherently, he's probably going to go up in value as well. Deshaun Watson, coming off of a down season, again, probably also going to go up in value. My running back core, Rachaad White, Roschon Johnson, Deuce Vaughn. These guys are low risk, high upside type of young running backs that they could materialize. Maybe Rachaad White has a RB2 caliber season this year. Maybe Roschon Johnson is this year's Dameon Pierce, and he's an RB2 as well. At that point in time, my young wide receiver core, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, QJ, Rashad Bateman, Cedric Tillman, all these guys, if they're all performing as well, maybe Pat Fryermuth is the top 6 tight end. Sam Laporta maybe is working into my lineup because it is best ball, like I said. Then at that point, maybe I can take some of the first round picks that I have in 2024. I have a mid first, a projected early first, and a projected late first. Maybe that projected late first gets me Tony Pollard on the open market if my team breaks right. But for now, I'm just content letting this thing develop. I have 3 1s next year and a couple 2s as well. I'm probably just going to spend those picks on running backs.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. That is the definition of an house money. I had another team that I was going to add here, but it was too strong at running back position. That is probably more of a contender than a house money team. These 2 teams that I actually selected fit the ideal exact archetype that we kind of pointed out. So the first team here, Mickey Mouse Analyst League. I've talked about this in my own Dynasty Decisions and recap of rookie drafts. Guys like, Ron Stewart, Dynasty IM, Jacob Sanderson, a lot of high profile analysts in this league. So this is definitely not your typical home league, high school reunion type of league. No, this has got some sharp minds in it, and I was still able to build what in my opinion, could potentially be a monster in a year time, aka our exact house money type of layout. So in terms of this team, strong at quarterback, Josh Allen, Bryce Young, I used my 103 on, Daniel Jones in particular there, with Jimmy G as sort of play bait, quote unquote, in season. If somebody needs a quarterback too, I can kind of ship them. Running backs, not really much there. Damian Harris, Tyler Algier, wide receivers stacked to the rim, as you guys can see with Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, and some young guys added there. Tight end, I do have Michael Mayer, who we both have as a top 10 overall tight end in Dynasty. But the main allure of a lot of these house monies is going to be that pick bank, that iron bank of picks that you have on the side there. 5 first-round picks in 2024, 2 seconds, along with multiple picks in 2025. So for me personally, this is the definition of a house money, being that I'm strong at quarterback. I'm strong in numbers, especially at wide receiver, with potential guys that maybe don't transition into a high-end, top-end producer in year one. But if Drake London breaks out, if Brandon Ayuk becomes the wide receiver one in San Francisco, there is upside for them to potentially produce. And this is the type of team where if I notice those young wide receivers are developing all at once and end up being, wide receiver 2+ in fantasy, I do have the pick arsenal to be able to add to my running back position if need be in season. So this is one of my favorite positions. This is the type of team that I can kind of just wait and see. If the wide receivers aren't ready to develop, I just wait a year, add Raheem Sanders, add Travion Henderson, Donovan Edwards, whatever running back you want to put in the 2024 class. But it does have upside where if it does overproduce by my standards, I could potentially add in season.
Yeah, exactly. Again, similar structure to my team. You basically could add running backs. If you were impatient, you probably would. You would probably sell all your picks and go after running backs and go after wide receiver talent. But again, you got a young core and a young nucleus. You're going to be patient with it. Come 2024, you're going to have a bunch of running backs on their rookie contracts ready to compete. Similar situation again with my can't wait team, where this one I think is a lot more interesting, a lot more fun, at least mid-season, because I do have a lot of high leverage backs on my team that I can sell if I want to, because I have Charbonnet, AJ Dillon, Rashad Penny, and Elijah Mitchell. Not only do I have the same structure as the first team that I talked about, where Patrick Mahomes and Bryce Young are going to be my locked and loaded stable quarterbacks for the next 5 to 10 years, I also still have Garrett Wilson, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson, Jahan Dotson. All these guys are like 23 years old or younger. And I have Kyle Pitts, who, again, is more of your long-term asset than he is necessarily in the short term. And I have 4 first-rounders next year, and I have a couple extra third-rounders as well. So with this team, I could potentially hit the iron bank, right? Let's say Kenneth Walker goes down week 1 with an ACL tear and AJ Dillon's the lead back in Green Bay somehow. I could shove my chips into the middle. If my receivers are performing, my quarterbacks are performing, maybe I go out to a contending team and buy his Kirk Cousins and Keenan Allen to get myself another running back or another wide receiver and another quarterback. Maybe I send another first-round pick for Josh Jacobs or whatever, and I can build out a contender that way. But again, I'm content holding this thing. I'm content capitalizing on value pockets if I can get them. If Michael Gallup's had like 4 blow-up games in the first 6 games of the year, and maybe I could sell off on him. Like I said, if Aaron Jones misses 6 games, I can maybe sell AJ Dillon. Whatever the case is, it's a very similar situation. I have 2 young, stable quarterbacks, a young, stable wide receiver and tight end core, and 0 RB, high leverage upside running backs that will eventually be my running back depth and not my running back starters once I spend those picks.
Yeah, and a very similar situation to that, what I have in 905 Dynasty. A little bit weaker at the quarterback position comparatively, obviously, with Patrick Mahomes and Bryce Young. You're in a better spot than I do have here with Dak Prescott and Trey Lance. And, of course, I'm weak at running back here with Samaje Perine, Jalen Warren, Jerick McKinnon, all guys with potential upside. Obviously, Samaje Perine, if Javonte Williams gets off to a slow start, he should have a good role in that Broncos offense. Jalen Warren, obviously, Najee Harris been kind of inefficient, banging with injuries this past year. Maybe he has a bigger role on that Steelers offense. And then Jerick McKinnon, if he plays anywhere close to that end of the season that he had for that Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs offense, you're looking at a potential running back contributor. Again, not guys that I have huge expectations for coming to the year, but all guys that potentially have paths to create more production than I potentially even see out of them, like I said, coming in, July, August, even early September. The main allure of this team, though, like you guys can see, is that wide receiver position. Olave, London, Smith, Moore, Ridley, Addison, Johnson, Burks, Tony there. Tight end, I do have TJ Hawkinson, along with 4 picks in 2024. So hypothetically, if I'm looking at this team, it's clear that my wide receivers are probably stacked to even a fault. I probably have too many guys on this team. So for my strategy here, if I was fully ready to compete, if I was fully ready to put the chips in, again, a little bit more of an inactive league, but something that come in season time, I'll have opportunities to be able to make moves. If I can shift, 2 or 3 of those wide receivers and maybe get 1 extra quarterback, maybe see if I can get, a Justin Fields, a Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray type in that instance. Then you add 1 more quarterback to this team. You have all those picks to be able to add to the running back position come next year, and you still have a stacked wide receiver core. So while I don't have that quote unquote ideal quarterback room that I would want in a house money team, I have a lot of potential opportunity given how loaded I am at wide receiver to be able to add that to my arsenal.
Yeah, and another underrated part of building a house money team is because you're not looking for year one production. Let's say you've gotten to the mid-season point in your league, and your wide receiver position isn't quite developing to the extent that you thought. They're taking a little bit longer. Maybe Drake London's offense is throwing 22 times a game, or whatever the case is. And you have Kyler on your team, and Kyler hasn't developed yet, or he hasn't come back on the field yet from his ACL tear. You might get to a point in the season where your job should be to like kind of buy 1 year punt type of assets. So, for example, last year when Javonte Williams went down, I bought him for Gabriel Davis in a second round pick. Maybe this year, Breece Hall is still not on the field. It's week 4 and he's still not back. Or Javonte Williams himself, still not back on the field. And you can get them for a huge, huge discount, knowing that you don't need the production this year. You're hoping for next year's production or whatever the case is. Maybe a different running back suffers like a 10-week hamstring injury or something like that. You can take advantage of those value windows and build out your running back core, your other position groups that way as well. If we get to the week 5 standpoint and Breece Hall's a setback with his ACL tear, you might be able to, with this team that you have as an example, ship Quentin Johnston off straight up for Breece Hall because QJ's had like a really good start to his career or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And building that wide receiver depth is always nice, in my opinion. Obviously, again, this might be a little bit of overkill, but having that many tangible assets on the open market to potentially fill my needs afterwards. I was at a point in the rookie draft where you guys can see I had the 107, I had the 108. I knew it's more likely that people would be active in the season, given it's more casual league, rather than at the rookie draft. So instead of, forcing a running back pick or forcing a Will Levis pick because I quote unquote need those positions more, I took the talent, and now it opens me up to more opportunities come in season where if I want to package a couple of these guys together, like Corey kind of said, attack a running back, attack a quarterback who might be at 80 to 90% of his market value rather than 100%, I have the opportunity afforded to me.
Yeah, and like you said, if it's a more casual league, I would be going after Kyler Murray yesterday with this,
Yeah.
with this wide receiver core that you have, and you have so many guys too that there's got to be somebody that player likes, right? Like they might be a Bears fan or something. You can sell them DJ Moore, or they might really like Devontae Smith, and you can sell them Devontae Smith. Like it doesn't really matter when you have this many tangible assets, this many liquid assets to be able to sell. So hopefully this gave you guys a good insight to what we're talking about when we say house money all the time on Dynasty Decisions videos. If we've called a team of yours house money on Dynasty Decisions, hopefully you now understand what we're talking about, because we haven't really defined what that means in a video yet. So this was us doing that. And hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, comment any of your thoughts down below. Any questions you have, we will definitely answer them. And also be sure to check out the productive struggle strategy video that we did a couple weeks ago, the contending strategy that we did. And if you want access to all of our Dynasty rankings, all of our bonus content, Danny's doing his Truth series again, which was the contextualized game logs last year. I'm running a summer scouting series on the 2024 class. So if you're wondering how good is the quarterback class next year, how good is the running back class next year, I will have that all covered along with everything else I just mentioned available on flockfantasy.com. And you can use the promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit for 30% off your initial price there. And then also you get a 2-day free trial to check out all that stuff risk-free, and 6 months for free if you sign up annually. And also a special promotion we're doing right now is that if you sign up annually, you can get a free Zoom consultation with us. So after you sign up, just get in touch with us and be like, hey, I signed up annually. I'm looking to book my Zoom consultation, and we'll get something set up there. And we can talk about anything you want. It could be Dynasty, it could be redraft, it could be best ball. Maybe you want to start a fantasy channel and you want some help with it. We'll help you with that as well. So definitely excited about that. Danny looks like he wants to say something, so I'll let him do that.
I was just going to say, yeah, anything you guys want to talk about. You want to talk about baseball, you want to talk about basketball, anything you want to talk, obviously more fantasy football focus, but the ball is in your core. Whatever you guys want to talk about, if you've always wanted to tell us whatever it is, feel free to do so.
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, check out all that stuff. Check out our sponsors in the description. With that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.